Hey guys, Chad with New England Homesteaders here. It's a rainy day out and our outside plans are kind of put on hold, so today we're going to be making grape jelly. We're just going to use a recipe out of the Blue Ball canning book, not some secret grandma's recipe or anything, but my neighbor over here, we'll take a peek outside. My neighbor next door, just past the chicken coop, you can see, has a grape arbor, and the grapes went crazy this year, growing all up in the tree, and he's got so many grapes he doesn't do anything with, so we bartered. We traded him some eggs. There's our chickens. Traded him some eggs and some jelly last year for grapes. So this year, I went over and asked him if he enjoyed the jelly. He said absolutely. I gave him some more eggs, and we just picked a whole big bucket of grapes. So I'm going to walk you through what we need to do here today. So here's our big bucket of grapes. There's probably about 10 or 15 pounds of grapes. So the first thing we need to do is sort through these and put the good grapes in here and the trash in there. And then we're going to add a quarter to a half cup of water for each quart of grapes that we pick. So we'll measure that out, and then we're going to boil it down and strain it using cheesecloth. So we're going to strain the juice back into a pot, and then you're going to add in sugar. It's quite a bit of sugar. It's about almost 2 cups of sugar per cup of juice. And then it's going to get brought to a boil, and we're going to add in some liquid pectin. And then you basically just ladle it into the canning jars. These are the basic tools that we'll use to lift or to place in the hot water or to lift them out of the hot water. And we'll kind of walk through each one of these steps, but this is an interesting tip that a friend of mine showed us. So when you get this case of jars from the store, if you've got a new case, leave this hinged on one side. So when you're putting these back together, or when you put them back in the case and stack them on the shelf, this will help keep all the dust off of them. So that's about it. So let's get started. All right, so I sorted through that whole big bucket of grapes. I've got all the good grapes in here. Got most of the stems and branches, leaves, all that kind of stuff out of there. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to get strained. But I'm guessing that's about 7 quarts. So based on the recipe to make the juice, we're going to add somewhere between a quarter and a half a cup of water per quart of fruit. So if we go with 7, probably put about 3 cups of water in there. And then we're just going to put that on the stove and simmer it for 10-15 minutes or so, mash it up a little bit to make the juice, and then we're going to strain it into another container with cheesecloth to get all of the seeds and any other little stems and the meat of the fruit and the skins as well. Alright, so we got it all cooked down and simmered for 10 or 15 minutes and used a potato masher to mash it up just a little bit, and then we poured it into the colander that's lined with cheesecloth, and you can hear it all dripping down in there, and you can kind of stir it a little bit, pull it out of the center and get it to drain through. So once we finish straining all of this, then we're going to let it settle, and a lot of the tannins you'll actually see sort of powdery settles out at the bottom, and then we're going to be careful to kind of pour that off. We'll pour the juice back into probably this pot right here and go to the next step, which is bringing it to a boil, adding in all of the sugar. We'll have to figure out exactly how much juice we have to calculate how much sugar to add, and then we'll add the liquid pectin and follow the steps to get it into the jars and then into the canner. Okay, so we ended up with 12 cups of juice. We measured that out. We've got all of our jars, our canning jars washed and drying over there, and then we're going to use this hot water bath canner as well as the pressure canner without the pressure valve in there. We're just going to put the lid, and we should be able to get these done at one time. So I think about 12 will fit in here and 12 will fit in the hot water bath canner. So we've got all the lids washed in there. We've got some boiling water here, which the main intent is just to soften up the rubber lids, which are where? Over here. So we've got the rubber lids here, and if you kind of drop them in individually like this, then they don't stick together when they're down in the water. So we're going to let those soak. And we've got our little magnet tool. You can kind of stir them around, but this also lets you just pull one out at a time. So we'll let those soak for a few minutes. And now we've got 10 pounds of sugar here, and the recipe for this pectin jelly is calling for every 4 cups of juice requires 7 cups of sugar. So that's going to be this whole bag plus another cup is 21 cups. And then each 4 cups of juice is going to call for 1 of these pouches of pectin. So we're going to need 3 pouches of pectin. So we're going to bring the juice to a boil. We're going to get all of this sugar, 21 cups, to dissolve. And then we bring it to a boil and add the pectin in. You boil hard for a minute. And then we're going to use the ladle, and we're going to ladle the jelly liquid into the jars and then put them in the hot water bath canner for 10 minutes. And they're good to go. So let's get started. All right, so we're dissolving over 10 pounds of sugar into the juice. It's actually dissolving a little bit easier than I thought it was going to. We've got a relatively high heat. It's not quite boiling. Keep going. Just dump the rest of it in.
No, it's a lot.
Oh, still a lot?
Oh, yeah.
Alright, so we got all the sugar dissolved. That was 11 pounds of sugar, basically. Not quite 11 pounds, I guess 10 pounds plus a cup. So we just got to get this to a boil. And then we're going to add in the 3 pouches of pectin. Bring it back to a boil for 1 minute, and then it's ready to go into the jars. And probably we'll skim off some of this foam first before we do that. All right, so a little tip, don't turn your back even for a second, because it was taking forever to come to a boil, literally probably half an hour. And I kept stirring, it wasn't even bubbling. And I turned my back, and in just a matter of seconds it came to a boil and completely boiled over the whole stove and made a huge mess. So just poured into another pot. Now I've got to come back to a full boil, and then we'll add in the pectin. Here's another little tip on the pectin. They say to put it in a cup like this, and then it all kind of runs down to the bottom of the envelope, make it easier to dump in. So those are sitting there. As soon as we get this to a boil, bring it to a boil, add in the pectin, hard boil for a minute, and then we're ready to can. So got the canner here filled half full with water, so that's simmering, that's pretty close to boiling. And then in a second I will add, once I get the pectin added in here, I will get this one moved over and get that one up to a boil as well. So we just had about a half-hour setback, but we're getting there. So all of a sudden it comes to a boil again, so we're going to get the pectin in here. And so it's kind of syrupy, so we can squeeze it out. This one in there. Last one. Alright, so we got those 3 in there. I'm going to bring this back up on high. Keep stirring, and we're going to get it to a full boil again. And boil it hard for 1 minute, and then we're good to go to put it in the jars. Alright, so final tally is 24 half pints and 1 pint jar. The recipe calculation would have been 21, but we ended up with 24 plus that. So, what's that?
It would have been more.
Oh, yeah, except we boiled over a lot. So, we're not using the racks, so we're going to have to place these down in here. Hopefully we can fit 12 in each. We want the water to cover the lids by about 1 to 2 inches. Bring it to a boil, 10 minutes, and then you take them out, let them cool and set up, and you're done. So, let's see. We're going to have to load these in one by one, which is less than ideal, but I'm going to set these down in. Just like that. So we're going to load up 12 of those.
There you go.
Alright, so we got the last one in there. So we got 12 in each. So we're going to put the covers on, bring these to boil, 10 minutes, and then they're done. And here, pull that one out a second. So the last one right here doesn't need to be canned. We're just going to put this in the fridge overnight, and we'll be able to use that tomorrow. Alright, so this one hit 10 minutes. And the great thing about this hot water bath canning is when it's done, you can just take the lid off and you can lift them out. When you're pressure canning, you'd have a pressure gauge mounted in here, and that little thing right back there pops up and actually locks the lid on. So when you turn off the heat after you've hit your 75 minutes or 90 minutes at whatever certain pressure you're canning at, you have to wait, and it's pretty close to an hour for it to cool down and the pressure to subside enough that that little lock will unhook. So this one took a little bit longer, so I got another 5 minutes before I can pull them out of here. But this one's ready, so we're going to go ahead and pull these out of here. Alright, so you can get this grabber down in here. Pull this out, and I'm just going to carefully set it down over here. I'm not supposed to tilt them or spill that water off of there. And in a few minutes you'll start to hear them pop. Alright, so we're pulling just the last few out of here, and you'll hear they make a pop when the lid's set. Sort of the satisfying noise that lets you know that they worked. I heard a couple that kind of sounded like duds. But what we do with any that don't pop, and we can check them after they're all cooled tomorrow, any that haven't popped, we'll go ahead and just put in the fridge and use right away. And that's typically what we do with any of the meat that we can as well. But that's it. So we've got 24 of these half pints that will go into storage, and we've got a full pint in the fridge that we can use right away. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video.